So we were not in time to get the beauty of the pui in terms of the yellow and pink effervescence, but at the same time we are very happy to be sitting in the shade one and also experiencing the beauty and the fragrance of the cannonball tree. We are at the Queen's Park Savannah, where we're going to be speaking with martial artists, holistic healer, and just, I almost want to call him a high man, Kevin Nelson. You want to stay tuned for this conversation. Thank you very much for making the time, Kevin. How you do, sir?
I am well. Thank you very much for having me out here. I mean, I'm enjoying the scenery and enjoying the beautiful shade under the cannonball tree.
Very happy that we were able to get that shade.
Oh yes, very much so. Yeah.
But and I think this is very much in keeping with a lot of your energy, your ethos, being closer to nature. So even before we start to get into some of your martial traditions, because like we said, you're a martial artist, what are some of the things that would have led you to that point? Is it that nature first then martial arts, or martial arts then nature? Or do you make a distinction?
Over time, I believe the distinction was made for me because I remember as a youth growing up in St. Joseph, being out in my backyard and being in nature, right? And just being by myself. I was the youngest, right? And I would spend hours in my backyard, you know, just playing with my toys, being in nature, probably doing some physical activity, climbing the guava tree, falling down and hitting my head. You know, these kind of things that young boys get into, well, back in the 80s then. And it's been a real journey for me because, you know, it started off in having that interaction in nature. You know, my parents taking me on hikes, right? As some of my fondest memories as a child, right? And then getting into the world part of living in society, you know, going to school and not really having the time dedicated to go into nature and just, you know, just kind of relax and take in, you know, what nature has to offer, the gifts nature has to offer. And it was the pivotal moment for me in my martial arts journey was after I finished my degree, all right? And that was something for me that kind of, I don't know, it helped me to see that I was capable of so much more, right? And so I set out to find or to actually master myself, what is called self-mastery. So with no guide, right, as to how you go about, you know, doing this thing, I set out to study ancient practices, ancient arts such as Tai Chi and things like Kundalini yoga and these sort of things, right? Going back in the past to bring back something old, you know, back to the present. So
kind of Sankofa business.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But so deciding, okay, well, I want to master myself. I want to be able to do certain things. I want to be able to push through. In that kind of pivotal moment that you said that the degree showed you that you're capable. Because sometimes the only way to get to it is to go through it. And then you look back and say, wait now, it's all that I do, boy? And then you ask yourself, what else can I do? But why those disciplines, why those arts? What is it about Tai Chi? What is it about Kundalini yoga?
So in all my studies, what was shown to me was that the knowledge of self is the ultimate or the supreme form that, you know, we can pursue, right? Tai Chi means supreme grand or grand ultimate, Tai Chi Chuan, supreme ultimate boxing, right? So I figured if there was any place that would give me, the answers that I'm seeking, it would be from that practice of Tai Chi Chuan, right? And so I dove in 2019. I found a practitioner here in Trinidad and Tobago, and who had all the relevant experience. He had 45 years experience with instructing in Tai Chi, right? He's won Olympic medals in the art, and so when I went to him, I submitted myself to his teachings, and I've been doing Tai Chi for the past 6 years now.
You see that point of submitting, and to me that also marks, that's a timestamp or a milestone in the evolution of an individual. Because there's a point where we're hearing what people around us say, but we may look at it and say, okay, well, what are people saying versus what I have in my head? And that might be very different from what I have in my spirit. And then you still want to say, okay, well, I want to be the master myself, but then to submit, that's a powerful word. And to consciously and intentionally do that. What was that like? Were you ready for it? Was there a piece of fighting up along, or you're still fighting up along the 6 years? What is that process like?
So it started for me with a lot of reflection, right? And a turning inward. So an inner gaze of who am I? What are my values, right? What are the things that I want to believe in, or the things that I would like to share with people? Some of the things that I would spend. This is when I actually got back time after I finished my schooling. I got back time to go back into nature, right? And to submerge myself literally into the forest. I would go into nature on my own, right? I'd go hiking up to Rincon, right? I'd just be there by the waterfall, taking in the natural energy, kind of like how you see in Japanese anime, where the character is in nature and he's doing his meditation and he's just absorbing the natural energy.
Building up his chakra.
Yeah. So it started with that, and then I was like, well, how can I take this further, right? How can I, develop these skills or these attributes of mindfulness, peacefulness, compassion, all these things that go along with, what Tai Chi teaches, right? And it was a period. I call it my period of not necessarily loneliness, but seclusion, right? Because I believe that anyone who wants to go through a process of transformation needs to be able to seclude themselves away from other people's ideas, opinions, thoughts, and beliefs, so that they could return to center, so to speak.
I think, and it's something you're talking, I'm going to pause reason, because I think that experience is built into so many spiritual paths, in terms of like having the need for this wilderness experience. And you could, looking at the fact that we have the lead up to Diwali, Eid, Easter is there, looking at practitioners of the mass, be it rope jab, stickmen, people doing kalinda. And there's this period, so when you hear people talking about 40 days before the carnival, tell them rope man or tell them Buaman to start the ritual. Yeah. And being able to go in, build from within, and when you fortify from within, you're able to come out and face the challenges that are presented to you, and do it with a level of beauty, which is sometimes an aesthetic that not everybody can appreciate as much. Some people might say, well, they're flamsing or this or that, but to be able to do something with a level of beauty, I think is really important.
Beauty and grace. That's how I think about it, as grace. You know, it's like a certain attribute of the divine that you embody as a living being. You know?
And on that note, we're going to let that breathe a little bit. We're going to take a short break. We continue speaking with Kevin Nelson. When we return, stay with us. Welcome back. We are speaking with Kevin Nelson, and Kevin Nelson is a martial artist. One of the things he does is, or one of the ways that he articulates his martial art with grace and beauty is Tai Chi. Now, we haven't necessarily gotten as, not necessarily deep is the word I want, but I'm very grateful to have the context being set. And one of the reasons for that is that when we hear about martial arts in Trinidad and Tobago, we don't necessarily hear Tai Chi being the first thing mentioned. I don't know if it's why is that, because we see a lot of Kung Fu, karate movies. Wing Chun is a thing now with regard to the Ip Man and these sorts of things. But is it, in your experience, is it something that you find a lot of people gravitating to?
Yes and no, because it also depends on the person, what goals they're trying to achieve, because other martial arts such as karate and Wing Chun, I mean, these things have certain energetics with them. They're very offensive. Well, in the sense they're used as, you know, offensive arts, all right? They're more exoteric. Well, I view them as exoteric. And Tai Chi has that. It brings a balance of philosophical, right, and physiological exercises. So you create activities for mindfulness, as well as develop the physical aspects of yourself. So for me, it provides a balanced you know, view or experience of martial arts. And there are a lot of people who I've come across who want to learn Tai Chi, who say, hey, that's very interesting. And then you have some people who say, that's too slow. It's too slow for me. You know, I don't know how you could do that. But yeah, it all depends on the person.
And what type of persons are that? Because I see someone who's a little more, one description might be introverted, but another description might be somebody who is willing to look and listen. Because sometimes you find an introverted person being very willing, well, okay, the time calls for this, so I'll be that. But I'm very happy to come back. And that goes to your point again of balance. But what are some of the things that, in terms of that more esoteric, that building balance, what are the exercises like? Were you surprised when this person has 45 years experience, says, okay, well, do this? And then you're there, because when we were speaking before, I was talking about simple may not always equate to easy. And looking at yin yoga and the fact that you're holding a pose for so long, and if your mind is very willing to wander, sometimes that can be even harder than something that is just more physically, I guess, demanding. So what was that like for you?
So in my introduction to the art form, many of the exercises, even though they may have seemed simple in the beginning, right? And I didn't understand, the purpose clearly, right, of the exercises or the effects that they may have had on me. Well, over time, from my experience, I can testify to the effects of the exercises, and it's more of a refinement of movement, right? Because in the movements, you learn to use proper posture, right, and alignment of the body, which this is the vessel that we use to channel the energy, the heavenly energy, and the earthly energies, and concentrate it in your dantian, right, which is what they call your battery, right, or your store of energy. And so this energy that we have, or what they call original chi, original energy, what we're born with, what nurtures us when we're in our mother's womb, right? When we run out of this storehouse of energy, we can gather it from our environment, right, and circulate it through our body to vitalize, our bodies then, right? And this refinement, it happens over time, right? So you get more, you build a sensitivity towards the movements, and because the energies are very subtle. Yeah.
And one of the things I'm smiling at, because I can imagine somebody listening to this conversation and be like, what? But then what helps me in this moment is trying to walk the path of the drummer, and even like looking at the way that you're talking about heavenly versus earthly energy, and having someone describe the difference between somebody who would play almost exclusively on congas, and that energy is a lot of yang energy, so it's coming from above through and playing out, versus somebody who's playing a lot more djembe, where it's more yin coming from the earth to be projected out this way. And even like looking at the way that the body type kind of lends to that, looking at who's doing what. So these things translate along different paths. It's just that it's almost as though we go into the same place, but they take a different route.
Yeah, a different path. Yeah.
I think it's really interesting. And is there, one of the things that I've heard about is internal versus external energy. And make that distinction for me, thanks.
So internal energy, or what they call internal alchemy, you alchemize your energy. So when I was referring to your dantian, right, and having this original chi or prenatal chi, right, which we all have. So the external energy would be your yin and yang polarities of the cosmic energy, which they refer to as the Tao, which is it's translated as the way or the path, right? This energy permeates everything and is everywhere in all living things, in all matter, right? And so we can internalize this energy, all right, and concentrate it, gather it, circulate, and vitalize our human vessels, right? Be successful in life, right?
How do you take the practice and move with it to everyday life? Because how do you find it influencing bleeding into, how do you use and utilize, even if you're not using some of the instruments, but just in your day-to-day practice of living, how do you use the teachings of Tai Chi and some of the other disciplines to help you go through the day?
One simple exercise that I do, what Tai Chi has taught me, is to help me to focus on my breath. focus on breathing. So I could be walking down the road, driving in my car. I'm going to do intentional breathing. So is one of the requirements for Tai Chi exercise is natural or abdominal breathing. So it's breathing from your lower diaphragm. And this is something that, I definitely was not aware of. You have different modes of breathing, right? Most people, well, I can even say for myself, I'm a chest breather. You breathe very shallow, right? And the effects of that is you cannot maintain proper control of your emotional states, right? The breath has a controlling effect on your states of consciousness and emotions. So when you breathe deeper, you're able to focus more and overcome, anger and depression and all the ills that affects us as human beings, as living beings. The breath is one of the most powerful things that we can, and it's easy. All you need to do is just put the intention towards it, and you can do it sitting down, you can do it anywhere you want to.
On behalf of the entire TTT News team, this has been In Depth with me, Dike Rostant. Thank you so much for joining us.